The rain fell softly on the streets of Ibadan. The market had closed hours ago. Most vendors had packed their goods and gone home. But in the corner near the old bridge, one man remained. His name was Adewale. People called him Baba Lantern because every evening he lit a small brass lantern and set it on his wooden cart. The lantern was old, dented, and covered in scratches, but it still burned bright. Adewale sold roasted corn and groundnuts. He was a thin man with gray hair and kind eyes. His clothes were faded, his sandals worn through at the soles. He had no family, no children, no wife. He lived alone in a single room behind a mechanic's shop. But every night, without fail, he lit his lantern. "Why do you still sit here, old man?" a passerby once asked. "Go home and rest." Adewale smiled. The lantern must burn. Someone might need its light. People thought he was lonely, maybe a little mad, but they did not know the truth. The lantern was not ordinary. It remembered faces, and every night, it called to the souls of those who once loved him. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. Adewale had not always been poor. Once, long ago, he was a teacher in a small village school. He taught children how to read and write. He bought them books when their parents could not afford them. He stayed late to help the slow learners catch up. The children loved him. They called him Uncle Whale and ran to hug him every morning. Their parents respected him. They brought him yams, fruits, and sometimes a live chicken. But then the school closed. The government said there was no money. Teachers were sent away. Adewale lost his job. He moved to the city, hoping to find work. But no one wanted an old teacher with no certificates. He tried many jobs. He swept floors. He carried bags at the market. He washed cars in the rain. Eventually, he bought a small cart and began selling roasted corn. It was humble work, but it kept him alive. Years passed. His hair turned gray. His back bent from pushing the cart. But he never complained. One evening, an old woman stopped at his cart. She bought corn, then stared at him for a long time. "Do I know you?" Adewale asked. She shook her head and walked away. But her eyes were full of tears. That night, after the woman left, something strange happened. Adewale lit his lantern as usual. But this time, the flame flickered strangely. It pulsed as if breathing. Adewale leaned closer. Inside the glass, he thought he saw something. A face. Faint, like a reflection in water. It looked like the old woman who had bought corn from him. He blinked. The face disappeared. "I am tired," he muttered to himself. "My eyes are playing tricks." He packed his cart and pushed it home through the dark streets. But all night, he could not stop thinking about the face in the lantern. The next evening, Adewale returned to his usual spot. He roasted corn, served customers, and lit his lantern when the sun went down. This time, he watched the flame carefully. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the flame began to shimmer. And there, inside the light, he saw it again. A face. But this time it was different. It was the face of a young boy, smiling. Adewale's heart skipped. He knew that face. It was one of his students from many years ago, a boy named Tund, who had loved to draw pictures in his notebook. "Tund," Adewale whispered. The face smiled wider, then faded into the flame. Adewale could not sleep that night. He lay on his thin mat, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with questions. Why did he see Tund's face? Was it a dream? A memory? The next morning, he asked his neighbor, Mama Kemi, if she knew anything about old lanterns and spirits. Mama Kemi was a large woman who sold vegetables. She believed in many things others did not. Ghosts, ancestors, curses. Why do you ask? She said, cutting okra with a sharp knife. I saw a face in my lantern, Adewale said quietly. A boy I used to teach. Mama Kemi stopped cutting. She looked at him seriously. Faces do not appear for no reason, Baba. Maybe that boy is trying to reach you. But why? Adewale asked. I have not seen him in 30 years. Mama Kemi wiped her hands on a wrapper. Because you mattered to him. And when people love you, their spirits remember. Even after death. Adewale's throat tightened. You think he is dead? I do not know, Mama Kemi said. but spirits do not visit the living unless they have something to say. That evening, Adewale returned to his cart with a heavy heart. He roasted corn slowly, his mind far away. When the sun set, he lit the lantern and waited. The flame flickered, and this time, two faces appeared. The first face was Tund again, still smiling. The second was a girl. She had bright eyes and wore her hair in two thick braids. Adewale remembered her immediately. Her name was Folake. She used to bring him mangoes from her father's tree. Folake, he whispered, his voice breaking. The faces glowed softly in the lantern, then faded. Adewale sat down on his wooden stool, his hands shaking. He did not understand what was happening, but he felt something deep in his chest. Warmth, sadness, love. A young man approached the cart. "Baba, are you well? You look like you have seen a ghost." Adewale forced a smile. "Maybe I have." The young man laughed and bought 2 cobs of corn. After he left, Adewale stared at the lantern again. "Why are you showing me their faces?" he asked the flame. "What do you want me to know?" The lantern did not answer. It only burned quietly, casting long shadows on the ground. That night, Adewale dreamed. He was back in the village school, standing in front of his students. They were all there. Tund, Folake, dozens of children, sitting on wooden benches, smiling at him. "We remember you, Uncle Whale," they said together. "We never forgot." When Adewale woke, his pillow was wet with tears. The next few days were strange for Adewale. Every evening, when he lit the lantern, more faces appeared. Some he recognized immediately. Others took time to remember. There was Bukola, the girl who always sat in the front row. There was Emeka, the boy who stuttered but loved to recite poems. There was Amina, the quiet one who drew flowers on the edges of her notebook. Each face appeared for only a moment, glowing softly in the flame, then disappearing like smoke. Adewale began to feel something he had not felt in years. He felt remembered. He felt loved, but he also felt confused. Why now? Why after so many years were these faces returning to him? One evening, an old man with a walking stick stopped at his cart. He bought groundnuts and watched Adewale carefully. "You are the teacher," the old man said suddenly. Adewale looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" "My son told me about you before he died. He said you were the only teacher who believed in him. His name was Tund." Adewale's heart stopped. "Tund is dead." The old man nodded slowly. "He passed 5 years ago, but before he died, he told me to find you. He wanted to thank you." Tears filled Adewale's eyes. "I did nothing special. I only taught him." "No," the old man said firmly. "You gave him hope, and hope is everything." After the old man left, Adewale sat in silence. The weight of the truth pressed down on him. Tund was gone, and perhaps others were too. That night, he did not light the lantern immediately. He sat beside his cart, staring at the brass lamp in his hands. It was old and battered, passed down to him by his father. His father had used it to read by candlelight when there was no electricity. "What are you trying to tell me?" Adewale whispered to the lantern. He finally lit it. The flame rose strong and steady. And this time, the faces came faster. More than before. 10, 20, maybe 30 faces flickering in the light. Some were children. Some were grown. Some were old. Adewale's breath caught. These were not just his students. These were people whose lives he had touched. A woman he once helped carry her sick baby to the clinic. A young man whose school fees he had quietly paid. A girl he had taught to read when everyone said she was too slow. "You all remember me," Adewale whispered, tears streaming down his face. The faces glowed brighter, as if answering him. Then, slowly, they began to fade. But before they disappeared completely, Adewale heard something. A voice, soft and clear, like wind through leaves. "We are coming to see you." Adewale did not sleep that night. The voice echoed in his mind. "We are coming to see you." What did it mean? Were they coming as spirits? As memories? He lay on his mat, staring at the ceiling, his heart racing. Part of him was afraid, but another part of him felt a deep, aching hope. The next morning, Mama Kemi knocked on his door. "Baba, there are people looking for you." "People?" Adewale sat up quickly. "Who?" "I do not know, but they are gathering near the bridge. Many of them." They say they are looking for a teacher named Adewale. Adewale's hands trembled as he put on his shirt. He followed Mama Kemi through the narrow streets toward the bridge. His heart pounded with every step. When he reached the bridge, he stopped. A crowd stood waiting. Men and women, young and old. Some held flowers. Some held pictures. Some held children by the hand. One woman stepped forward. She was middle-aged with kind eyes. "Uncle Whale," she said softly. Adewale stared at her. Slowly, recognition dawned. "Folek," she nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, uncle. It is me." Adewale's knees weakened. Folek, the girl with braids who used to bring him mangoes. She was alive. She was here. "How did you find me?" he whispered. "We all found each other," she said. "And we came to find you." Folek explained everything. Years ago, after the school closed, the students scattered. Some moved to the city. Some went abroad. Some stayed in the village. But they never forgot their teacher. Recently, a few of them reconnected on the internet. They shared memories of Uncle Whale. They talked about how he had changed their lives. Someone suggested they find him. It took months of searching. They asked in villages. They posted on social media. They followed every lead. Finally, someone remembered seeing an old man selling corn near the Ibadan bridge. A man who lit a lantern every night. "We did not know if it was you," Folek said. "But when we arrived and saw the lantern, we knew." Adewale looked at the crowd. He saw faces he recognized. Emeka, the boy who stuttered, was now a lawyer. Amina, the quiet one, was a doctor. Bukola, who sat in the front row, was a mother of 3. "You all became something," Adewale said, his voice shaking. "You all succeeded. Because of you," Emeka said, stepping forward. "You taught us to believe in ourselves." Adewale shook his head. "I only did my job." "No," Amina said gently. "You did more than that. You loved us when no one else did." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some wiped their eyes. Others nodded. Adewale felt something break open inside him. All the years of loneliness, all the nights of pushing his cart alone, suddenly felt worth it. The reunion lasted hours. People shared stories. They laughed. They cried. They brought food and drink. The street near the bridge became a celebration. Adewale sat in the center, surrounded by his former students. He listened to their stories. How Tan had become an engineer before he died. How Folek had opened a school for poor children. How Emeka now helped people who could not afford lawyers. "You planted seeds, uncle," Folek said. "And we grew." As the sun began to set, Adewale lit his lantern. Everyone gathered around it. The flame burned steady and bright. "This lantern has been with me for many years," Adewale said softly. "I thought it was just an old lamp. But now I understand. It was not the lantern that remembered your faces. It was my heart." The crowd fell silent. Some bowed their heads. Others held each other's hands. "I thought I was forgotten," Adewale continued, his voice breaking. "I thought my life meant nothing. But you came back. You remembered me. We will always remember you," Folek said, kneeling beside him. "You are not just our teacher. You are our father." Adewale wept openly. The crowd wept with him. And in that moment, under the glow of the old brass lantern, something beautiful happened. Love that had been scattered across years and distance came back together. It wrapped around Adewale like a warm blanket. He was no longer alone. That night, Adewale could not stop smiling. His former students walked him home. They saw his small room behind the mechanic's shop. They saw the thin mat on the floor, the single pot on the stove, the cracked mirror on the wall. Folek's face hardened with determination. "Uncle, you cannot live like this." "I am fine," Adewale said quickly. "I have everything I need." "No," Emeka said firmly. "You gave us everything. Now, it is our turn to give back." Adewale shook his head. "I do not want your money. Seeing your faces is enough." But his students would not listen. They gathered outside and talked in low voices. Plans were made. Phone calls were exchanged. By morning, everything had changed. A truck arrived. Men unloaded a new bed, a table, chairs, a stove, and bags of rice and beans. Folek brought curtains. Amina brought medicine. Bukola brought clothes. Adewale stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "This is too much." "It is not enough," Folek said, hugging him. "You deserve a palace, uncle. But for now, this will do." Adewale's eyes filled with tears again. He had cried more in 2 days than he had in 20 years. That evening, he did not push his cart to the bridge. Instead, his students threw a feast in the street. Neighbors came. Music played. Children danced. And in the center of it all sat Adewale, his lantern glowing beside him. The days that followed were the happiest of Adewale's life. His students visited often. Some brought their children to meet him. Others brought gifts. But the greatest gift was simply their presence. Folake insisted he stop selling corn. "You have worked enough, uncle. Rest now." But Adewale refused. "The cart is my life. If I stop, I will fade away." So a compromise was made. Adewale would sell corn only 3 days a week. The rest of the time, he would rest and spend time with his students. One afternoon, Emeka arrived with a surprise. "Uncle, we have something for you." He handed Adewale an envelope. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter was from the village school where Adewale used to teach. The photograph showed the school rebuilt, freshly painted, with a new sign above the gate. The sign read, "Adewale Memorial School." Adewale stared at the picture, his hands shaking. "Memorial? But I am not dead." Emeka laughed. "We know, but we wanted to honor you while you were still alive. The school reopened last month. We raised money to rebuild it, and we named it after you." Adewale could not speak. He pressed the photograph to his chest and wept. All those years ago, when the school closed, he thought his work had been erased, but it had not been erased. It had only been sleeping, waiting to bloom again. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." One evening, as Adewale sat beside his cart lighting his lantern, a young woman approached. She looked nervous, clutching a small bag to her chest. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you Baba Lantern?" Adewale smiled. "Yes, my daughter. Do you want corn?" She shook her head. "No, I came to ask you something." She hesitated, then continued. "I heard about you, about how your students came back to honor you. I heard you lit a lantern every night and it remembered faces." Adewale's smile faded. "Who told you this?" "People talk," she said. "They say your lantern carries spirits, that it shows the faces of people who loved you." Adewale looked down at the lantern. The flame flickered gently. "I do not know if that is true, but I know this lantern has been with me through hard times. Maybe it remembers more than I do." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "My father died 3 months ago. I miss him so much. I wish I could see his face one more time." She paused. "Can your lantern show me his face?" Adewale's heart broke for her. "Child, I do not control the lantern. I cannot make it show you anything. Please," she begged. "Just let me sit with it for a moment. Maybe he will appear." Adewale nodded slowly. "Sit, my daughter. Stay as long as you need." The young woman sat beside the lantern, staring into the flame. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Her shoulders slumped with disappointment. "I am sorry," Adewale said gently. "The lantern shows only what it chooses." The woman wiped her eyes. "It is okay. I just miss him so much." She stood to leave. But just as she turned away, the lantern's flame pulsed. Adewale saw it first. A face appeared in the light. An old man with a kind smile. "Wait," Adewale said urgently. "Look." The woman turned back. Her breath caught. There, glowing softly in the flame, was her father's face. She fell to her knees, sobbing. "Papa, Papa, I see you." The face smiled at her, then slowly faded. The woman stayed on her knees for a long time, crying and laughing at the same time. When she finally stood, she hugged Adewale tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for keeping the light burning." After she left, Adewale sat in silence. He realized something important. The lantern did not just remember faces from his own life. It remembered love itself. Wherever love had been given, the lantern could bring it back, even if only for a moment. Word spread quickly. The next evening, more people came. A mother wanting to see her son. A husband wanting to see his wife. An orphan wanting to see her grandmother. Soon, every evening, a line of people formed near Adewale's cart. They came from all over the city. Some traveled for hours just to sit beside the lantern and wait. Not everyone saw a face. The lantern showed what it chose. But those who did see their loved ones left changed. They cried. They smiled. They thanked Adewale with trembling voices. Adewale did not charge anyone. He gave corn freely. He listened to their stories. He sat with them in their grief. Mama Kimmy watched from her vegetable stand, shaking her head in wonder. "You have become a healer, Baba." "I'm just a man with a lantern," Adewale said. "No," Mama Kimmy replied. "You are a man who kept the light burning when everyone else gave up. That is why the spirits honor you." One evening, a pastor from a nearby church came to see Adewale. His face was stern. "People say you summon the dead. This is witchcraft." Adewale looked at him calmly. "I did not summon anyone, Pastor. I only light a lantern. What people see is between them and God." The pastor frowned. "The dead should not return." "They do not return," Adewale said softly. "They only remind us they were loved." "Is that so wrong?" The pastor opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped. He looked at the lantern. The flame burned steady and pure. He saw no darkness in it, only light. Finally, he sighed. "Perhaps you were right. Perhaps love is stronger than death." He left without another word. Weeks turned into months. Adewale's cart became a place of pilgrimage. People traveled from distant towns just to sit beside the lantern. Some brought offerings, flowers, candles, food. Adewale accepted nothing, but gave everything. His former students worried about him. "Uncle, you are working too hard," Folek said. "You need rest." But Adewale refused. "As long as people need the light, I will keep it burning." One night, a beggar came to the cart. He was filthy, his clothes torn, his feet bare and bleeding. People moved away from him, covering their noses. But Adewale smiled. "Come, my brother. Sit." The beggar sat cautiously. "I have no money," he said. "I do not need money," Adewale replied, handing him roasted corn. "Eat." The beggar ate hungrily. When he finished, he looked at the lantern. "They say this lantern shows faces of the dead." "Sometimes," Adewale said, "but not always." The beggar stared into the flame. "I had a daughter once. She died when she was 5. I have not seen her face in 20 years. Adewale said nothing. He simply sat beside the man and waited. The lantern flickered. A face appeared, a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. The beggar gasped. Tears poured down his dirty face. "My baby, my little girl." He reached toward the flame, but the face faded before he could touch it. The beggar wept openly, his body shaking. Adewale placed a hand on his shoulder and let him cry. After the beggar left, Adewale felt tired. His bones ached. His eyes felt heavy. He packed his cart slowly and pushed it home through the dark streets. When he reached his room, he collapsed onto his bed. His breath came in short gasps. His chest felt tight. Mama Kimmy found him the next morning, lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. "Baba, are you sick?" "I am just tired," Adewale whispered. Mama Kimmy called Folek immediately. Within an hour, Folek arrived with a doctor. The doctor examined Adewale and shook his head. "His heart is weak," the doctor said quietly. "He needs rest, complete rest." Folek knelt beside Adewale's bed, holding his hand. "Uncle, you must stop working. Please." Adewale smiled weakly. "The lantern must burn. We will light it for you," Folek said, tears in her eyes. "But you must rest." Adewale wanted to argue, but his body betrayed him. He was too weak. He nodded slowly. That evening, Folek took the lantern to the bridge. She set on Adewale's cart and lit it carefully. A crowd gathered, as they did every night. But something was different. The flame burned, but no faces appeared. People waited for hours. Nothing. "Where is Baba Lantern?" someone asked. "He is sick," Folek said. "He is resting." The crowd murmured with concern. Some prayed. Others left quietly, disappointed. Folek stayed until midnight, staring at the flame. But it remained empty. Just fire. No faces. No memories. Days passed. Adewale grew weaker. The doctor came every day, but there was little he could do. "His body is tired," the doctor said. "He has worked too hard for too long." Folek and the other students took turns sitting with him. They fed him soup. They read to him. They held his hand. One evening, Adewale opened his eyes and saw all of them gathered around his bed. Folake, Emeka, Amina, Bukola, dozens of others, their faces filled with love and worry. Why are you all crying? Adewale whispered. I'm not dead yet. They laughed through their tears. We are not ready to lose you, uncle, Folake said. Adewale smiled. You will never lose me. I am in your hearts. I am the school you rebuilt. I am in every kindness you show to others. But we want you here, Emeka said, his voice breaking. We just found you again. Adewale reached out and touched Emeka's face. And I am grateful for every moment. But when my time comes, do not be sad. Light the lantern, and remember me. That night, Adewale asked for the lantern to be brought to his bedside. Folake carried it carefully and placed it on the small table. Light it, Adewale whispered. Folake struck a match. The flame rose, steady and strong. Everyone watched in silence. And then, something beautiful happened. The flame began to glow brighter. Faces appeared, not one or two, but hundreds, thousands, filling the room with light. The faces swirled around the room like stars. Adewale saw them all. His students, the people he had helped, strangers whose lives he had touched without knowing. Tun was there, smiling. Folake's father, the beggar's daughter, the young woman's father, all of them, glowing softly, surrounding Adewale with love. Do you see them, uncle? Folake whispered, tears streaming down her face. I see them, Adewale said, his voice filled with wonder. I see everyone. The faces did not speak, but Adewale heard them anyway. In his heart, thank you, they said. Thank you for the light. Adewale closed his eyes and smiled. He felt no pain, no fear, only peace. One by one, the faces began to fade. The room grew darker. The lantern's flame flickered lower. Folake grabbed Adewale's hand. Uncle, do not leave us. Adewale opened his eyes one last time. He looked at Folake, then at all his students gathered around him. Keep the light burning, he whispered, for others who need it. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed. And then, gently, like a candle blown out by a soft wind, Adewale was gone. The room fell silent. The lantern's flame went out. Darkness filled the space. Folake sobbed. Emeka bowed his head. Amina covered her mouth. They had lost their teacher, their father, their light. But then, something strange happened. The lantern began to glow again. Not from fire, but from within. A soft, golden light that had no flame. The funeral was held 3 days later. Hundreds of people came. His students, the people he had helped, strangers who had heard his story. The streets around the bridge were filled with mourners. They buried Adewale in the village where he once taught, near the school that now bore his name. The grave was simple, marked with a wooden cross, and his name carved carefully into the wood. Folake placed the brass lantern on top of the grave. You will always be our light, uncle, she whispered. As the sun set, she lit the lantern one final time. The flame rose strong and bright, casting light across the graveyard. And then everyone saw it. Faces appeared in the flame. Not sad faces, smiling faces. Adewale's face among them, glowing with joy. People gasped. Some cried. Others knelt and prayed. The faces stayed for a long moment, then slowly faded. But the lantern continued to glow. It burned through the night, through the rain, through the wind. It did not go out. Folake returned the next morning. The lantern still burned, though no oil remained inside. She tried to lift it, but would not move. It had rooted itself to the grave, as if it belonged there now. It is his spirit, Mama Kemi said, standing beside her. He is still keeping the light burning. Folake nodded, tears in her eyes. Then we will protect it, forever. Word spread quickly about the lantern that would not go out. People came from all over Nigeria to see it. They stood at Adewale's grave, watching the flame burn without oil, without wick, without explanation. Some said it was a miracle. Others said it was the work of ancestors. The church called it a sign from God. But everyone agreed on one thing. Adewale's love had not died with him. Folake and the other students built a small shelter over the grave to protect the lantern from rain. They placed benches nearby so people could sit and pray. Slowly, the grave became a shrine, a place where the broken came to heal. A woman whose husband had abandoned her came and sat for hours. She did not see a face in the flame, but she left feeling lighter, as if someone had listened to her pain. A young man who had lost his job came seeking hope. The flame flickered as he prayed, and the next week he found work. A mother whose son was sick came and begged for healing. That night, her son's fever broke. People called it magic, but Folake knew the truth. It was not magic. It was the power of a life lived with kindness. Adewale had loved without expecting anything in return, and that love had become eternal. The lantern burned for months, through Harmattan winds, through heavy rains, through the hottest days of the dry season. It never went out. 1 year after Adewale's death, his students gathered at the grave to honor him. They brought food, drinks, and stories. Children played nearby, while adults shared memories of Uncle Whale. Folake stood before the lantern and spoke to the crowd. My teacher once told me that kindness is like a seed. You plant it, and you may never see it grow. But one day, it becomes a tree that shelters many. She gestured to the people around her. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, mothers, fathers, all of them shaped by one man's love. Uncle Whale planted seeds in us. Folake continued, her voice strong. And now we must plant seeds in others. That is how we keep his light burning. The crowd murmured in agreement. Emeka stepped forward. I propose we create a foundation, the Adewale Foundation, to help children who cannot afford school, to support teachers who work in poor villages, to light lanterns in dark places. The crowd erupted in applause. Hands shot up with pledges of money and time. Within an hour, the foundation was born. That evening, as the celebration ended, Folake sat alone beside the lantern. She stared into the flame, remembering the old man who used to sell corn by the bridge. We will not let your light go out. Uncle, she whispered. I promise. The flame pulsed softly, as if answering her. Years passed. The Adewale Foundation grew. Schools were built in remote villages. Scholarships were given to orphans. Teachers were trained and supported. Thousands of children received the same gift Adewale had once given: hope. The lantern at his grave continued to burn. Visitors still came, now from across West Africa. People wrote books about Adewale. Songs were composed in his honor. His story was taught in schools. But the most beautiful thing happened quietly, without fanfare. Teachers across Nigeria began lighting lanterns in their classrooms. Not electric lights. Simple brass lanterns, like the one Adewale had carried. They called it the lantern tradition. At the end of each school day, the teacher would light a lantern and say, Remember, you are loved. Remember, you matter. Remember, your light can change the world. Children grew up with this ritual, and when they became adults, they carried it with them. Parents lit lanterns for their children. Friends lit lanterns for each other. Communities lit lanterns in times of darkness. The light spread. 1 lantern became 2. 2 became 10. 10 became thousands. Across cities and villages, across forests and deserts, lanterns burned. And at the center of it all, at a small grave in a quiet village, the original lantern still glowed. Unchanged, unending. Folake, now an old woman herself, visited the grave every month. Her hair had turned gray. Her back was bent, but her eyes were still bright. One evening, Folake brought her granddaughter to the grave. The girl was 7 years old, curious and full of questions. Grandma, who is buried here? The girl asked. A great man, Folake said, kneeling beside the lantern. The greatest man I ever knew. Why does the lantern never go out? Folake smiled. Because love never goes out, my child. Even when people die, the love they gave remains. It burns forever, lighting the way for others. The girl stared at the flame, mesmerized. Can I light a lantern too? Yes, Folake said, tears in her eyes. One day, you will light many lanterns, and you will teach others to do the same. They sat together in silence, grandmother and granddaughter, watching the flame dance. Around them, other visitors prayed quietly. A teacher, a mother, An old man who had once been lost but was now found. As the sun set, casting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Folake felt a presence beside her. She turned, but no one was there. Yet she felt it clearly. A hand on her shoulder. A voice in her heart. "You kept the light burning," the voice said. "Well done, my daughter." Folake closed her eyes and smiled. "Thank you, Uncle Whale. Thank you for everything." When she opened her eyes, the flame burned brighter than she had ever seen it. Just for a moment. Then it returned to its steady glow. Her granddaughter tugged her sleeve. "Grandma, did you see that?" The light grew big. "Yes, my child," Folake whispered. "I saw it. Today, if you travel to that village, you will find the grave still there. The lantern still burns. People still come. They sit. They pray. They remember. But more importantly, they carry the lesson away with them. That one person's kindness can change the world. That love is stronger than death. That light, once kindled, never truly dies." The Adewale Foundation now operates in 12 countries. Thousands of children have been educated. Hundreds of teachers have been trained. Communities have been transformed. But the foundation is not the real legacy. The real legacy is in the hearts of people who learn to give without expecting anything back, who learn to light lanterns for others, even in their own darkness. Adewale was a poor man. He owned nothing but a cart, some corn, and an old lantern. Yet he became richer than any billionaire, because he was loved, remembered, honored. And every night, across Nigeria and beyond, people light lanterns and whisper his name. They tell his story to their children. They teach them to be kind, to be generous, to keep the light burning. The lantern that remembered faces became the lantern that changed a nation. And Adewale, the forgotten teacher, became unforgettable. His light still burns, and it will burn forever in every act of kindness, in every generous heart, in every soul that chooses love over selfishness. Because kindness never dies. It only changes who it touches. The story you have just heard is a beautiful folktale I heard long ago. I'm telling you to wake your minds to kindness, fairness, and how we should care for our teachers, our elders, and those who pour their lives into others without asking for reward. Remember, every small act of love you give becomes a light that burns forever. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Light a lantern in your own way. And never forget, you are loved, you matter, and your kindness can change the world. Thank you for listening.